The Unseen Debt. Arjun was still very young when he learned that life wasn't going to be easy. He came from a family that barely had enough to make it through the week. His father had passed away when he was young, and his mother stitched day and night, hoping each garment would pay for the next meal. But the money never lasted long, and Arjun soon realized that if he wanted to study and keep food on the table, he had to do his part. So, every day after school, Arjun would sling a small bag over his shoulder and go from house to house, selling everyday items like pins, combs, shoe polish, and thread. It wasn't much, but it helped cover his school fees and, on good days, a little snack on the way home. One afternoon, after a long, tiring day, where door after door had politely turned him away, Arjun felt dizzy. His stomach was empty, his legs were sore, and the sun was far too bright for someone who hadn't eaten since yesterday. He thought of going back home, but home didn't have much to offer either. He stopped in front of a small, quiet house with a neatly trimmed garden and stood there for a moment. It wasn't easy to ask for help, especially when you're used to figuring things out on your own. But he couldn't shake the hunger anymore. He walked up to the door and knocked. After a few seconds, a teenage girl opened it. She looked about his age, she may be a little younger. With a curious but kind expression on her face, she was clearly surprised to see him. Arjun cleared his throat. "Sorry to bother you," he said softly, "but would you happen to have a glass of water?" The girl looked at him for a second. She could tell he wasn't just thirsty. There was something else. Maybe it was the way he was holding himself, or how pale his face was, but she didn't ask any questions. "I'll get you something," she said, and walked back inside. Arjun stood awkwardly on the porch, half expecting her not to return. But within a minute, she came back not with water, but with a tall glass of milk. "I figured you might need something a bit more filling," she said, handing it to him. He was taken aback. Milk wasn't easy to afford for families like his, or even for families like hers. But the way she said it, with a casual kindness, told him it wasn't charity. It was just human. He took it with both hands and drank it slowly, he almost feeling his body start to relax as it went down. It wasn't just milk, it was warmth, it was care, it was something he hadn't felt in a while. When he was done, he looked up at her. "How much do I owe you?" he asked genuinely. The girl shook her head, almost amused. "Nothing," she said. "Really, just take care of yourself." He smiled, genuinely touched. "Thank you, I mean it." Then he walked away. Years passed. Arjun worked hard. He finished school, got into college on scholarships, and eventually studied medicine. It wasn't easy, nothing ever had been, but he stayed focused. Maybe it was because he remembered that moment when someone had helped him without asking for anything in return. It had stuck with him more than he realized. Fast forward a decade. Arjun, now doctor, Arjun Mehra, was a practicing neurologist at one of the top hospitals in the city. He wasn't famous, but he was respected. He had a reputation for being deeply committed to his patients, the kind of doctor who actually listened. One day, a woman in her 20s was admitted to the hospital with a complex neurological condition. Her condition was complicated. She had shaking, tiredness, and moments of confusion that doctors couldn't fully explain. Her name was Kavya. Over the weeks that followed, Dr. Mehra led her treatment. It took time, effort, and coordination with other specialists, but he stayed involved through every step. Slowly, her condition stabilized. With medication and rehab, Kavya began to recover. During this time, the two only spoke a few times directly. Most of their communication happened through nurses, reports, or brief updates during check-ins. Arjun didn't recognize her. She didn't recognize him. But something about her kindness, how she thanked every nurse, how she always smiled even on rough days, it reminded him of someone, though he couldn't quite place who. When Kavya was finally discharged, the hospital finance department prepared the bill. It was a long stay, and the total was more than she or her family could afford. They had some savings, but not enough for a city hospital with specialists. She sat alone in her room, holding the envelope, afraid to open it. When she finally did, she expected the worst. Instead, she found something unexpected. There was no amount listed, no breakdown of charges, just a note written neatly. Paid in full, years ago, with 1 glass of milk. It was signed, Dr. Arjun Mehra. She stared at it in disbelief, and suddenly the memory hit her. The boy at the door, tired, hungry, asking for water. Her mother had told her later that day, "It doesn't cost us much to be kind, but it might mean the world to someone else." Now she understood just how true that was. The moral of the story is that kindness doesn't always return the same day, the same way, or from the same person. But it does come back, often when it's needed most.